All right. So, you sent over this Page Six article.
Yeah.
It was all about all these celebrity breakups in 2025.
Right.
And, it's really easy to just kind of, skim those headlines and just see it as gossip.
Oh, for sure.
But I was looking at it and I was like, there are so many splits happening
Yeah.
in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
There's got to be something more here
Yeah.
that we can dig into.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what, for this deep dive, let's really look beyond the headlines and just see what patterns we can find.
Absolutely.
What do the timelines tell us?
Okay.
And maybe we'll find some really surprising things about these celebrity relationships.
Sure, for sure.
And this is all just, from the beginning of the year up to the most recent stuff.
Yeah.
Late March, early April.
Yeah. That's kind of a fascinating window, right?
Yeah.
To see so much happening all at once.
Exactly.
What is in the water, right?
I know.
Early 2025.
Seriously, right.
A lot of change happening.
Okay, so the article starts out by mentioning, a bunch of these breakups that were finalized or at least reported, right around the start of January. But some of these actually go back, even to late 2024.
Right.
So first up, we have Austin Butler and Kaia Gerber.
Okay.
And they reportedly ended things at the very end of December.
Okay.
So right before the new year. And then as we move into January, we see Courtney Ford and Brandon Ruth.
Mm.
And that was a pretty long marriage that they ended.
Yeah.
Naomi Osaka and Corday were another one. And then Jessica Simpson and Eric Johnson also announced that they were splitting up.
Okay, so a lot right out of the gate.
Yeah, and that's a lot right there as we're just starting the year.
Right.
So do you think there's anything significant about that, about just that initial cluster?
Well, it's definitely a notable start to the year, right, in terms of relationship changes. You know what really jumps out to me is just the huge variety in how long these couples were actually together. You've got Austin Butler and Kaia Gerber. They were together, about 3 years?
Right.
And then you compare that with Courtney Ford and Brandon Ruth. They were married for 17 years.
Yeah.
And Jessica Simpson and Eric Johnson, a decade together.
Yeah.
So, right off the bat, this first group just kind of shows us that there's not really a single, timeline or lifespan for these celebrity relationships. Some are going to be short and intense and maybe fizzle out.
Yeah.
And some are really going to manage to navigate all those pressures for a lot longer.
Yeah, and it's interesting because January wasn't even done with the relationship news.
Right.
We also saw a couple of engagements come to an end.
Oh, yeah.
Casey Clark and Nanny Gonzalez, who a lot of people probably recognize from The Challenge, and then Matt James and Rachel Kirkconnell from The Bachelor. And then just to add a different kind of drama, there was this very public split between Angelina Provarnik and Vinny Tortorella. And there were some pretty serious cheating allegations going around.
Yeah, that's always a mess.
Yeah, it didn't seem very amicable.
Definitely not.
So what do you think about that?
Well, you look at the way these announcements played out.
Yeah.
Casey and Nanny, they had that joint statement, which you see a lot of when engagements end.
Right.
But then you compare that to Angelina and Vinny,
Yeah.
and it's accusations flying everywhere.
Right.
It's two totally different worlds.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes you wonder what's actually going on behind the scenes.
Exactly.
How do you get to such different public presentations of the same kind of situation?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Totally. All right. So then February rolls around.
Oh, boy.
Another wave.
Here we go.
Lily Allen and David Harbour, they were married for 4 years.
Okay.
They reportedly called it quits. And then Shamar Moore and Jesri Deezen also split up.
Wow.
After being together for 5 years.
Okay.
But the reporting around that one made it sound like it was more mutual.
Right.
They were going to focus on co-parenting their child.
Got it.
So then we also saw Mamie Gummer and Meher Sethi's marriage end after 6 years.
Okay.
Greg German and Martha Champlin after 12 years together.
Wow. So another long one.
Yeah, and then Josie Canseco and Johnny Manziel.
Right.
But they were only together for less than a year.
It's interesting how much variety we're seeing.
Yeah.
It's not like all these short flings or all these super long marriages.
Right.
It's all over the place.
Right. And do you think that kind of goes back to what we were saying about how there's not really
Yeah, I think so.
one way that these relationships go?
There's no formula.
Right.
And it's not just the length. It's also how much they tell us about why things ended.
Yeah, that's true.
With Lily Allen and David Harbour, it was all kind of whispers and sources. But with Shamar Moore and Jesri Deezen, it was all about how committed they are to their family, even though they're not together romantically.
Right.
So the way they frame it initially, really shapes how we see it,
Right.
even if we don't know all the details.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, February also gave us this.
Oh, yeah. I was waiting for this one.
Huge. Very public, and I think it's fair to say pretty controversial.
For sure.
Breakup of Kanye West and Bianca Censori.
Right.
And the article really goes into the alleged reasons for this,
Okay.
like focusing on all his anti-Semitic comments and the controversy with his merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
And there are reports that Bianca Censori just felt like she'd had enough.
Yeah.
She couldn't be associated with that anymore.
It's understandable.
Yeah, and they even mentioned a post-marital agreement.
Interesting.
So this one really feels like it's tied to specific events.
Yeah.
And how those events played out publicly.
I mean, this goes way beyond the usual irreconcilable differences.
Right.
This is like real-world stuff.
Yeah.
Actions having consequences,
Totally. And how about March?
Oh, March was busy.
Oh, man. March kept things going.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so first up, Emily Osment and Jack Farina
Right.
filed for divorce after only 5 months of marriage.
Wow, that's quick.
Yeah, but they had apparently separated back in December.
Oh.
So it wasn't quite as sudden as it seemed,
Gotcha.
but still a very short marriage.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Sia and Dan Bernard, they also filed for divorce. And this is where it gets interesting. They actually had a baby together last year.
What?
Yeah, and Sia was seeking full custody.
Oh, wow.
So that adds a whole other layer to it.
Totally different situation.
Yeah, and then Quinta Brunson and Kevin Anik filed for divorce after almost 4 years of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mentioned that they had a post-nuptial agreement in place.
All right.
Then there was Holly Madison and Zach Bagans.
Oh, them again.
I know, right? They're on again, off again. Romance was off again.
It seems like it's always off more than on.
Seriously. Then Aaron Ashmore revealed that he and his wife Zoe Kate had actually separated during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he said it was a super tough time.
Yeah, can't imagine.
They had a new baby. His dad was sick.
Yeah, that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, and to round out March, Alex Jones and Erica Wolf split up.
Okay.
But the big thing here is that she requested a temporary restraining order.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that sounds like a really difficult separation.
Definitely sounds messy.
Yeah. Okay, so all that happened in March.
A lot going on.
I know, right? And then we come to April, which is like the most recent stuff in this whole snapshot.
All right, so what's new?
So Erica Durance and David Palfy, they finalized their divorce.
Okay.
But they'd actually been separated since 2022.
Okay.
And apparently Erica is in a new relationship now but wants to keep it private.
Good for her.
Then Victoria Fuller and Will Levis,
Right.
they actually ended things way back in fall of 2024.
Yeah.
But it was just reported recently.
Oh, so they kept it quiet for a while.
Yeah. And then Steve Guttenberg filed for divorce from his wife of 6 years, Emily Smith,
Okay.
citing those,
Oh, here we go.
irreconcilable differences.
The class.
I know, right? And then the very latest news, this is about Gleb Savchenko and Brooks Nader.
Right.
And this one's interesting because Gleb was apparently surprised to hear about the breakup through the news.
Seriously?
Yeah. He said that, like, the last time they talked,
Yeah.
Brooks had texted him asking to talk,
Uh-huh.
but he hadn't responded yet when the news broke.
Oh, wow.
So that's a pretty dramatic and honestly kind of impersonal way for things to end.
It is, yeah. Especially from his side.
Right.
Like, they were clearly not on the same page.
No, not at all.
About where their relationship stood.
So we've gone through like this whole timeline, you know, from beginning of the year into early April. And there's like a few things that really stand out to me, but I want to like zoom out a little bit and look at all this together.
All right.
So what are some of the like big themes or the reasons that seem to come up over and over again? Like we see irreconcilable differences so much.
Yeah.
What can we actually learn from that?
Well, irreconcilable differences is a very common legal term. And it's kind of like a catch-all.
Yeah.
It basically means they couldn't work things out.
Right.
But it doesn't really tell us what the actual problems were.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Right.
Different goals.
Yeah.
Communication problems growing apart.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So it's kind of like a polite way.
Yeah, I think so.
To just not air your dirty laundry.
Exactly.
Okay, but then we do see some more specific reasons mentioned, right? Like with Angelina and Vinny, there were the cheating allegations. And then with Kanye West, it was all about those public controversies. Yeah. And Aaron Ashmore talked about all the pressure from the pandemic.
Right.
So those give us a little bit more to go on.
Yeah, those are really interesting because you can kind of see how those external factors can really impact a relationship.
For sure.
Especially when you're in the public eye.
Right. And then another thing that's interesting to me is just how different the lengths of these relationships are.
Yeah, totally.
Some of them are really short.
Like Emily Osmond's marriage.
Right. Only 5 months.
5 months.
And then some lasted for years and years.
Yeah, over a decade even.
So do you think that tells us anything about celebrity relationships in general?
I think it probably just reflects what we see in relationships everywhere.
Okay.
Some just aren't meant to last, and others just find a way to make it work.
And when it comes to making it work or not making it work,
Yeah.
the way these breakups are announced publicly,
Oh, yeah.
it's all over the place.
Totally.
Like we talked about Gleb being surprised by the news.
Right.
Then you have Casey and Nanny with their, more formal statement.
Mm-hmm.
Josie Canseco and Johnny Manziel did that whole social media scrubbing thing. Matt James had that Instagram post where he was praying.
Right.
And Naomi Osaka said there was no bad blood.
Yeah.
And praised her ex as a father.
Wow.
So there's really no one right way to do it.
It's like everyone's figuring it out as they go.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the way they announce it or, don't announce it,
Yeah.
it really tells you something about the dynamic between them.
I think so.
Like a joint statement.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it seem like they're trying to present a united front.
Yeah.
Even if behind the scenes it wasn't so smooth.
Right.
And then the social media stuff, that's like wanting a clean break.
Uh-huh.
Wiping the slate clean.
And then those personal statements.
Yeah, those are interesting.
They give you a glimpse into how they're feeling.
But they're also super calculated.
Right.
They're managing the narrative.
Yeah. Trying to get ahead of the gossip.
Exactly.
And then we also saw a couple of mentions about those financial agreements.
Yeah.
Like Quinta Brunson had a postnuptial agreement.
Right.
And Kanye West reportedly had a postmarital agreement.
Interesting.
So does that kind of tell us that they were going into these relationships with a bit of a backup plan?
Well, I think it shows a certain level of like awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have so much money and assets involved.
It's just practical to have things in place.
Right.
In case things don't work out.
So it's not necessarily a lack of commitment.
Right.
It's more like
It's being realistic.
being prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
And then at the end of the article, they had those little "Where Are They Now" updates.
Oh, yeah. Those are always fun.
I know, right? So Erica Durant is reportedly in a new relationship.
Good for her.
But she's keeping it private this time.
Sorry, man.
Then Zach Bagans said he's dating now and moving on.
Straight to the point.
And then Shamar Moore and Jesri Dizon, they're focusing on co-parenting.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, so it's like these little glimpses into what happens after the breakup.
Right. Life goes on.
Exactly.
In different ways for different people.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
it's clear that these celebrity breakups aren't just gossip.
No, they're not.
They really do tell us something about relationships in general,
I think so.
especially when you're living your life in the public eye.
Yeah, that adds a whole other level of pressure.
Right. And we've seen so many different situations,
Mm-hmm.
different timelines, different ways of dealing with it.
And you know what strikes me is that even though these are celebrities with these very specific problems,
Yeah.
they're still dealing with things that we all deal with.
Right.
Like figuring out how to be connected to someone,
Mm-hmm.
but also be your own person.
Yeah.
Dealing with change, with disagreements,
Yeah.
figuring out how to keep that spark alive.
Right?
It's all very human.
And I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So considering all these breakups that we've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think it tells us about how hard it is to maintain a relationship when you're constantly in the spotlight?
That's a good question.
And for you as a listener, do you see anything in these stories that you relate to?
Yeah.
Even though you're probably not dealing with the same level of fame.
Right.
It's interesting to think about, right?
Definitely.
Well, thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
Absolutely. This was great.
I'm glad you liked it.
Always a good time.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.
Bye.